Hi guys, welcome to another episode. Today my guest is Brian Koo. Brian is President and CEO of BricConsulting, and Brian's been helping people, especially in a business growth period. He's a growth expert and also a sales expert. So welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on and to be here with you today.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to learning from you. You've been doing this for a long time, and and always, I'm truly, looking forward to talking to industry experts and getting the take on, especially this time when business owners, looking to make a decision, and the time like this, when every decision is so critical on people and businesses. So always, need a, insight from you guys, direction on the companies. So tell us a little bit about you, Brian. How did you get involved in BricConsulting? How did you get all started?
So I guess I've kind of been a consultant my whole life. I started my career with Ernst & Young in corporate consulting, doing performance measurement and in corporate Canada, a lot of Crown Corporation work and the likes. I then did about a dozen years of working as what I used to call a hired gun. So I would go in and work with various small and medium-sized businesses and help them grow and scale. And that's really where I got my feet wet with sales, because I built many a sales department and sales team there, working in the small business space. And then for the last 7 years, I've struck out on my own and started BricConsulting. The timing just felt right to do that. So I've done that and really haven't looked back. It's been a lot of fun helping businesses grow and scale, and learning lots of things and really and just adapting. So the sales world was often seen as sort of something that hasn't changed since the 1920s, and I guess in some ways it hasn't. But really, in the last few years, there's been a lot of major impacts that have really changed and have started to change, and that change is continuing forward. So it's been an exciting time.
Was that change started before COVID, or did that COVID kind of trigger the change? What kind of change are we talking about in industry?
So I think the change probably first started back many years ago, but really it's the onslaught of two factors: the internet and the mobile phone, which has really driven things. With the improved, not just having the internet, but the improvements in the internet and being able to work remotely, people being able to run businesses online, all those kind of factors have really driven people to change. Where it used to be our network of business contacts was what I'll call Main Street. It was people up and down one main street in your town, and if you needed a lawyer, you walked down the street and there was your friend who was a lawyer. You knew your accountant down the way. If you needed banking, you went down the street. Everyone was in one space, and that's kind of how we did work. With the onset of the internet, that changed dramatically, and I think really with COVID has greatly accelerated that, because people's reliance on the internet just increased. Well, it became paramount. And so people's network has grown into, it's not the people who are in my town or in my neighborhood. It is now the people who are in my network. So it's about who's in your digital network, and that isn't limited to geography. That could be worldwide. You can get whatever experts you need to help you with exactly what your situation is.
Did COVID kind of push that to the edge? That this concept more on a relationship side selling, that before it was this was the network was there, but COVID kind of pushed that. Everybody's remotely. Now remotely, you have to build the same connection that you were building physically in person before, right?
Yeah. So what's happened with COVID is all of a sudden everyone had to be online. You may still been, some people still had a physical presence in their business, especially in the essential service side, but everyone had to be online and had to do business online, and things, things that we used to, things were moving that way anyways, but, we kind of dragged our feet. We still invoice by mail. We still receive checks in the mail, those kinds of things. That disappeared really quickly through the last year with COVID. Everyone doing all sorts of pieces online, and selling online became a piece too. I think one of the big changes is everyone was at home. So, we lost trade shows. We lost, you couldn't do, obviously, knock on doors and do face-to-face selling. But even telephone selling, unless you had people's cell phone numbers, you couldn't really reach them. You'd be phoning an empty building where a phone was. It might have been forwarded to someone, but it would have been forwarded to someone at their home, who then would have had to figure out how to get in touch with someone, and so on. So that whole piece of being able to track people down by phone really didn't exist anymore. So how did you get a hold of people, right? You needed another means, and that sort of became, you had to find them online and go after them through emails or through social media programs.
So how's company, your side companies getting over these issues? Is a social media as one, the one channel where people take on, hey, listen, if somebody's active in a social media, I can connect on a social media, or is it simply old way, just trying to find us, office numbers and finding somebody to get a cell phone number, or just going through what do you think is working in that regards, Brian?
Yeah, so I think what's happened is things have really changed. So there's obviously lots of new solutions coming out, but I think some things haven't changed, and that is, we still make decisions, we still make buying decisions on relationships, who we know, who we trust. So there's that component. We also still want to, have the best person we can possibly get in there. And we buy relationships. We like to work with people we like. So there's a fit piece component that's always there. So for people, they need to build a relationship. So, the one thing that hasn't changed is there's always this pool of prospects. As a seller, you need to have a pool of prospects, and you need to stay in touch with them. You need to improve your relationship with these people at all times, right? So you start with them not knowing who you are. You start communicating with them and build up familiarity. You get to a point of familiarity where you can start to then build, that next level of a relationship with the person. Once you have that relationship, you're starting now at that point to have enough trust with that person that they're going to hire you to do something, and you get that initial test to work with that person. And then, you bring them on as a client, you work with them for a while, and after time and success, they then become a referral partner. So, you just have a chain of pieces. It all starts with, initial contact, and then you build your familiarity. And in some cases too, with some, it depends on the person, right? Everybody has kind of a different speed to that. But with some people, they won't even they won't have that initial contact with you until they're familiar with you. So you need to get your name in front of them 5 times, 7 times, 20 times before they're going to even be comfortable enough to say, okay, I'll now send them an email, or I'll have a phone call with them.
Yeah. And before COVID, it was easy, for us, in a position where we can sit down with the, business leaders, and either by coaching, either by, guiding, you can, help them make a decision, whatever the decision they were trying to make. How that works in a technology world where everything's, remotely, electronically, is that all pieces of technology make it more complicated for people to make decisions on any certain item? Is there added a complexity into it, or is it simplified? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's actually simplified. It can be simplified anyways. There's been a progression, and in the last few years, there's been, this number just keeps going up and up. And the last number I've seen is it's over 80% of people won't make a buying decision until they've actually researched either your product, your service, or your company, or you online. And I know that for a fact. On a personal piece, I've done the backtracking of every person who's ever bought from me has looked at my LinkedIn profile before they bought from me. And that has to be about 98%. And the 2% that haven't are people who either already knew me, or 2, they knew someone who knew me really well. So, you know what, people just don't buy blindly. So they're going to look you up, and the easiest place to look up information about someone, you can Google someone, you can find their website, you can find their LinkedIn page. Those come up really high on Google searches all the time. Research the person, you find out lots about them. That happens all the time. So you need to have that content there that's decent and good, so that people can quickly learn, get to know you, get familiar with you. One of the things I found is a really good tool is like little short videos, so people can just watch. You learn so much about a person by hearing them talk.
Mm-hmm.
You sort of see their mannerisms. You can see they come to life versus just a picture versus just some text.
Mm-hmm.
And so having a quick little video really gives people a warm fuzzy about the person, or not, which is okay too. But you become a person, and once you start to become a person, that's when the relationship piece starts and gets things going. If it's around a product or service offering, the same thing occurs. They're going to want to research it. They're going to look online. They're going to look and compare 2 or 3 different versions of it before they decide which one to buy. So that's very easily done digitally, probably easier digitally than it used to be. One of the interesting pieces and I have a lot of contacts in the sales training space, and where we used to spend a lot of time on training people is, know your product and learn it inside and out, what it can and can't do. And there used to be so much effort and time invested in the salespeople to do that. That's not important anymore, because most people who are buying have already done all that research. Their questions might be very finite, and you may need a technical support person to answer them anyways. Or you may have to actually go and research what their question is, because the questions are so good. Because that whole piece of how's your product better than your competitors, or does it come in blue? Those things are those are already all online, and you don't have to worry about finding those answers.
Yeah, because you put those kind of comparison on your website anyway, right? So people can go look up that information. You can compare with all the brands, and you're already putting that kind of information out there. So clients are already searching it. They don't need that information from why you are better and the best in the area.
And what that means in the sales world is you can speed along sales, because all that time you used to spend informing and teaching and educating a prospective client about your product and service, so that they've done that all on their own, while they're watching TV last night. You don't have to do it today. You can just worry about building that relationship. I remember when I first started working in consulting, there was an old consultant's trick, an old CEO trick they used to do with consultants. And you'd walk in the room with all the senior VPs around the table, all the senior leaders, and you prepared this nice little presentation. You hand out all the booklets, and it's got all the pieces, and the CFO flips right to the pricing page, and the operation guy is reading all the details, right? And as a CEO, he'd just take that little package and he just put it aside, turn it over. He goes, "We're not here to talk about that." He goes, "I'm going to go with the assumption," they used to do this all the time, "I'm going to go with the assumption that you know what you're talking about. And really why we're here is to find out if we can work together. Now tell me, let's start that conversation." And that just, if you're not prepared for that, it throws you completely off. You have no idea where to go and what to say. But after you've gone through that a few times, you know it's a pretty good piece. And typically what it means is, they've done their research. They know you're either the one or one of the ones. And really, what does it come down to, right? It comes down to the relationship you have with your suppliers. And can I trust if something, because no matter how good a product is, things can go wrong. And what we all want to know is, if something does go wrong, are you going to stand up for it? Are you going to be there to help me? How are you going to react when something does go wrong, if it does go wrong? Because that's what's key, right? Especially on the service side of things, it really is about, things will happen. As we all learned in the last year, things will happen.
Well, look at COVID. I mean, we always say in our company that, we are in a people business, nothing else. Forget about IT, forget about any other business. We are in a people business end of the day. And that piece, back to your point, during the COVID, that piece just become more and more critical, not only in a sales, but also in a service or also in a product. The human element just became more critical. Now you have to not only have to deliver product and services, but you also have to be concerned about each other's health and safety as well, just to make sure that everybody's safe as well. So, that component which you just mentioned, it got a lot more critical during the COVID.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So in the first 3 months of COVID, one of the things I did was, business kind of was really put on pause. So I thought it was a great opportunity for me to reach out and just really build my network in a big way. I had the time, and everyone else was sitting at home wondering what to do as well. So I thought it was great. And it's amazing the people I was able to reach. I was able to reach almost anyone. And You know what? Almost every conversation, and I used to start off with these 30-minute conversations that I have with people, and I was doing it around the world, and with CEOs of some very large companies and very small companies, everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And we all sat there and talked for about 10, 15 minutes about, how things were for our families and ourselves, and our health and our worries and our mental health, and often the mental health of our staff and our employees and our suppliers and everyone else and our customers. How do we make sure all that stays safe? That was primary one, right? And those were the conversations we had. So, and that's always how you can tell what's really important to people is when things get really bad, what is my first concern?
Yeah. Right? And that's what actually got me, started this YouTube channel. Simply those conversations I was having, and people trying to make a decision and the health concerns. As well as let me record a discussion with another business leader, how they're looking at this and how they're making decisions, right? I thought it was very critical to do that. So let's talk about the growth side. Is a sales the only item you guys look at? You guys also look at other areas of the business as well when we talk about growth, Brian? How about process around the sales or any other area where maybe they need to change their strategy a little bit, a business strategy, or maybe they have to realign what market is doing. So is it only sales, or you guys expand into different areas in a business as well?
Yeah, we look holistically because often, with all kinds of pieces in business, sales is just one metrics. And if you're not getting the sales you want or think you should be getting, there's lots of reasons why that could be. One could be, you're not spending enough time or effort into sales, and that would be an easy solution.
Okay.
But often not. It could be the wrong market, the wrong strategy, the wrong approach. It could also be very strategic in the product, right? So one of the pieces that actually got me into this space initially was I was finding these businesses where their sales pitch, how they were selling their product was, about customer service and how amazing we were at responding to customers. And yet when you looked at what they did, all they cared about was how high quality their efforts were. And I said, well, what you do and what you say are two different things. And so customers picked that up. So, even when they did get sales, they had retention issues. So we started really going, okay, let's be congruent. So we just, not that we weren't going to treat our customers well, but let's start talking about what we really do well, which is, is that quality of our service, which is what they internally were spending all the time and effort. They just they thought everyone wanted to hear what a great customer service and customer experience they were going to have. But you know what, you sell what you're good at. And then you try to improve on those other pieces for sure, but sell what you're good at. And so we aligned that. Once we aligned that having that congruency of messaging across, what you do and how you do it, and then you saying what you do, really, really helps arrive that. We often hear a lot around, that conflict between sales and marketing, which truly does exist a lot of times for a lot of reasons if you don't do it right. But sometimes it's that message, right? Is the marketing is trying to push certain points, but the salespeople push different points. So then the customer doesn't know what's important. What do they do? I can't understand. Does your car go fast or is it safe? I don't know. What you keep saying both. Is it fun to drive or is it get good gas mileage? Right? They get confused, right? So it always has to be the same message. It has to be congruent. You got to keep, you don't have to say the same words. You don't have to say the same pieces, but you need to be similar in your approach, and it needs to be consistent and congruent. And so making sure that happens through sales and marketing. One of the other pieces too, we see a lot is in the marketing space. Marketing will do a really great job and actually create leads that are inbound from the work they've done on brand and messaging. They hand those over to sales. Now, if sales is also generating their own leads, sales maybe have spent a year or 6 months nurturing someone to become a prospect, and they finally get a hold of that person, and the person says, I want to talk to you. That person may be the smallest sale the company's ever seen. The sale marketing might have handed him this morning, fresh and clean, maybe the biggest sale the company might ever get. But the salesperson's probably going to spend more time and effort on the one they worked on than on the good one. It's really hard for a salesperson to understand that, and they get their personal involvement. They've wrapped up the energy they put into it. into something, they spent months on versus something, a sticky note that landed on their desk. It's really hard to think that's going to be worth a lot more than what they've just spent months on working on. So how do you get the salesperson to understand that that could be worth so much, and how do you drive that through? In a lot of ways, I think it's to kind of, not have salespeople who do both, right? Is to divide that function up so that, the leads are given to the salesperson, and then their job is to, complete follow up and close and do what they're good at. It's also two different skill sets too around that nurturing of the relationship versus the closing component and negotiating. So sometimes it is good to split those up or to tag team. So you have two people who do that, right?
I see.
So yeah, that's a key piece too, but that sales and marketing flow is important. I often don't like to have the two words separated so much. I like to have it sales and marketing. If you want to have a branding, branding can be completely on its own and separate, and it's a different effort than what you're doing as far as sales and creating leads. Because I see creating leads as really a sales function.
I see.
Yeah.
They have to be synced. The messaging for both angles has to be synced. Otherwise you're breaking in between, right?
Yes.
So beside the messaging, where do you see a lot of business leaders, struggle when you try to implement a strategy or trying to take them in a directions and different directions they've been going in? So when you're trying to scale up the growth, where do you see the most business leaders struggle? Is it on a personal level that is a too big a change? Or is it a staff level? Where you see the biggest obstacle and the biggest changes comes when you're trying to scale up somebody's business?
It's different things for different people, but I think one of the big ones is focus, right? So, especially if a CEO of a company or a leader of a company, you're told, okay, you have to have a website, you have to have social media presence, you have to have good branding, you have to be doing email marketing and social media marketing and social selling, you have to have a strong sales team, right? So they pull all those pieces together, but are they the same? Are they congruent? Are they all trying to achieve the same thing? Sometimes, maybe you're doing too much. It's kind of like you're putting all your effort into a lot of areas as opposed to, which ones are working for us right now. And maybe it's more important to ensure that you have a really solid, couple of channels that are working well, and then expand on that. I would never suggest having just one channel. It's always good to have multiple channels because, sometimes at certain times, certain channels will outperform others. But, having too many different channels that aren't always up to date, if you don't have the resources and effort to put behind and do each one properly, it's probably better to not do them than to try to do them and not do them well.
Gotcha. So when definitely, completely. So when you try to gain the focus and gain the momentum and the growth, every time you grow in a business, personally, I find you have to grow personally. You have to change something in your personality. Personal development is not far off the gaining the momentum and gaining the focus for the business growth, right? They're both tied together. So where do you see, any challenges that you see business leaders struggling to gain that personal development momentum as well, especially with the COVID? The decision making is remote. Managing people is remotely is a different skill set than you would manage people in office, right? So where do you see any challenges and obstacles people dealing with, personal level when they go into the personal growth as they're trying to gain a focus in the company?
Yeah, it's been tough, right? And I've had some people who business leaders who very much care about their people and have really been, and I've heard it some very large companies who put out the same messaging is, just do what you can. Don't worry about it. If you can't work a full day, that's okay. And I've talked to a couple of those sales leaders recently, and they said, how do I get people to work again? Because nobody wants to work. It was really great getting paid to do an hour a day. And now you want me to do 8? That sounds like a lot of work. I like the hour a day of work.
Of course.
So, how do you, exactly. And, other people have the same issue with where their staff went on some of the government programs and got paid more or the same for doing nothing as they did working. So how do you put them back? How do you get them to come back off of government programs and start working again? But so that's one piece is, we've been, especially through the COVID period, people have been, very, and I think it's a great thing. I'm hoping some of these pieces become permanent changes to the way we actually deal with people, is people become very understanding and not very, and less judgmental. Right. So, I don't know what's going on in someone's life. I'm not too sure, how much stress and how much emotional toll is on them. And I think for most of us, every day that changes, or maybe every hour that changes of where our mental state is with this COVID thing going on. But, how do you energize and motivate people? You can still do some of those same old things around motivating your sales team. I've really moved. There's a couple of sales teams, which is one of the services I provide. Is I'll act as like a sales manager for the team. So I lead the team. I've moved to having daily huddles with my teams. It's a very common practice I usually use, but I'm doing it all the time now. So every day we talk about, what did we do yesterday? What did we accomplish? What are we going to do today? Is there anything we learned yesterday that we're going to do different today? And we just keep it to, very short timelines. One day, what am I going to do? What do I want to accomplish today? You know what? And if someone says, today I feel like crap, I don't think I'm there. Okay, that's cool, right? We'll pick it up tomorrow. But it's being understanding and non-judgmental. But we also want to, they'd also know they have to come on the call tomorrow and say, okay, yesterday I didn't do anything. Today I'm gonna do nothing again. That's hard. That's hard, right? So having that daily touch point is it's also really good for me to stay on top of people's where they're at, because not every day is going to be a great day, but you want to make sure that people, if someone is having a downward slide, your top performer is slipping every day. You want to be aware of that, and so you can track that on when you do a daily huddle. It's a very powerful tool, especially with the sales team, to keep them very focused. And we pivoted a lot, right, with messaging. And I have one of my sales teams that I'm managing. We're focusing on retailers is one of our target markets. So you can imagine what's happening there. There's a lockdown. There's not a lockdown. How do we keep is our messaging today? Can we go visit them in face to face and have a conversation, a second level conversation? It's been tough on those guys. We've been pivoting on a daily basis. Sometimes I'll say our strategy, or at least our sales plan for the week, has changed partway through the week. So it has to be that's another nice feature of having that day-to-day touch, is you can pivot very quickly.
Okay. Definitely. Is a role play? Is a role play part of that? I know some companies, they do a lot of role plays in the sales. Some companies, totally do once a week kind of stuff. Do you guys get into sales role plays and practice that? I know what they're going to be experiencing on a daily basis.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of my things. So I kind of have a structure that I follow with teams. So daily sales huddle, and that keeps care of the daily numbers, and we track the numbers. We do a weekly meeting. In the weekly meeting, we look at some weekly numbers, look at the trends more than the specific numbers, see what's going on, get feedback from people that's kind of more high level. And then we do training. So we actually practice what we've been doing. And what's really neat is to see over a week, someone's sales pitch has changed. And you go back to them and say, well, last week you were saying this, and now you're saying that. And usually the feedback is, yeah, when I said that, people, their eyes rolled back in their head and they glazed over and fell asleep when I was talking about that. So I changed it to this because I find people are more engaged. It's like, hey, that's good. What do other people see? Does anyone else see the same kind of thing? And you get, so do I. It's amazing to see how often, what you think might be a good pitch is, but you get to constantly improve it, and practicing it is really good. As well. We like to practice kind of look forward and go, okay, I have this big call coming up next week. Let's role play that one, right? I'll be the person. Tell me what you know about them, how they're going to respond. Because usually what happens is, in the salesperson's head, they're going, this guy's going to say no to me. He's very or he's going to ask me a million questions because he's really data oriented. And they're nervous about that. So sometimes it gets bigger in their head than it really is going to be. So it's good to role play it out, and you can kind of, you go, okay, look, I'm going to worst case scenario this. I'm going to be the guy from, the worst possible candidate you can possibly get. And then they see how bad it is, and they survived. And it's a safe place to do it as well. So that it really does help one, not only just get them better at and everyone's able to give them feedback on things they could do differently, but also it builds their confidence. They've gone through it once, and with all of us, the second time I've done something, I'm way better than the first time.
Definitely. Practice makes a whole lot of different cases. So let's talk about business leaders, Brian. Once this COVID is over, nobody knows when it's going to be over, but some sort of handle on it as the vaccine is rolling out. We're going through everybody's getting vaccines. Business leaders, sale is one of those things. Everybody needs to scale up their revenue levels, right? So we have to get back to the growth again. What can business leaders do now to prepare themselves, or what can they do now, and what can they, what should they be planning for, post-COVID, or but even a little better situation that we, some people in office, some at home. So what are the steps you be recommending, or what do you think they should be doing now? They can prepare themselves for later on what they're gonna do.
So yeah, interesting. So one of my strong points, what I do with all my candidates is we go to a very simple approach for sales, and especially these are B2B services and products that rely on relationship sales. Is we build a prospect pool, and we build like a large prospect pool. Like I like to go like lifetime. So how many people do you need in your prospect pool for a lifetime? And with a lot of people, I think with if you're a single salesperson kind of thing, I'm saying like 10,000 people, right? I know that sounds like a huge number, right? But once you start working the numbers, even from a laser point of view, 10,000 people, it's going to go up and down. But that's kind of the number we target at. With that 10,000 people, and the reason why it's 10,000 is at any point in time, 3 to 4% of those people are active buyers. And that's not going to be your customers. You might get a third of those or half of those. But you're depending on your market share, but you're going to get a percentage of that, 3 to 5%. So we're talking like 1%. So there's we're now down to 1,000 people. Do you need 1,000 people to get you through the year? That sounds like your right number. I mean, I just talked to a gentleman, and he said he had 250 is what they were targeting. And he goes, because I want some comfort zone, I want to take that to 500. So he wanted to have 500 active, prospects in his funnel, people who he was engaging with, to make his sales numbers for the year. And so we said, that's probably like 5,000 to 10,000 people we need to have in a pool that we're gonna draw from, so that we have those active people. And so there's always this piece in sales about working the numbers backwards. So I want to have a close today, so I have to have 2 pitches out there, and to get 2 pitches I need 10 people I have to contact with, and to talk to 10 people I now need to talk to 1,000 people. So I got to send out 1,000 emails or messages to people to get those numbers. So we always work those numbers, and you see how quickly I got to 1,000 people. So when we talk about having 10,000 people, if I contact one of those 10,000 people once a month, that's 1,000 people a month to get 5 closes, right? And that's kind of how the numbers work. So what I would suggest to anyone right now is the time. And really, this is and there's never a bad time, but now is definitely a really great time, is to build that prospect pool, and that is getting people's names and numbers, start to get there. And as we talked about, as I mentioned before, there's this trust relationship piece that starts with familiarity. So you got to get your name out there, because some people are going to want to see your name 5 to 10 to 20 times before they're going to even want to have a conversation with you. That's whether or not they're an active buyer or not. So you got to get your name out there. Because even if you were thinking of hiring an electrician, and an electrician cold called you today, would you automatically kind of go, hey, yeah, come by, fix my lights? No. You're gonna want to do some research. How do I know? But if he had sent you 5 flyers or 5 emails about electricity, and proven that he's got reputation, and these are some of his clients, and and you had a familiarity with his company and started to build some confidence in them. And then he called you and said, "Hey, we have a special on today." And you went, "Oh, great, I need them." Boom. That's when you might pull the trigger. But likely, it's just like we all get those cold call emails to our house about air ducts and things. No one wants to hire those people because I have no idea who they are, why they're calling me. It's just like, I'd rather do some research on the internet and find someone.
Yeah. Good. So what I'm hearing is that right now is that the time where you can start building your contact database, you start building your, but listing and sort out who you want to talk to, and get ready for it. And when the time comes, then you at least have enough contacts to deal with when the time comes after that.
Yeah, and actually, even right now, we're starting to see people start to plan out the last half of this year, which where in the U.S. and Canada, where the predictions are we're going to hit that 40 to 50% of people being vaccinated. There's beliefs that we were not going to see shutdowns after the summer. I've even heard of expect this summer to be I'll say fully open, right? With kids camps, everything going, all vacations kind of in full force. And I think people are going to take well advantage of the vacation component piece. I think everyone's ready. Yeah. But yeah, I think, they're talking about this summer, everything from the summer on is going to be, back to normal. I think maybe a new normal, but definitely back to a normal level of business. So people are already planning for that now. So, I know people on the hiring side are starting to look at hiring staff. What are the holes I have in my company that I need to fill if I'm going to grow? The other piece of that is prospects, because if I don't have sales, I'm not going to be able to pay for those salaries. So it's getting those prospects in there, and people do. There is three, depending on the business and what you're selling, that sales cycle is 3 to 6 months. People right now are definitely on the software side of things, are investing heavily in IT solutions, software. People are investing heavily in training as well as another one area I see a lot of things. So that's the other piece, right? Is building up those skills of their staff to get ready for the onslaught. Yeah. I've talked to, one of the things I like to stay in touch with is these guys who, I don't know what their titles are, but they're the future predictors, the guys who are doing the forecasting. I see. Whether they're economists or futurists, I like both. I'm an economist by trade, so I kind of probably comes to my naturally, but almost all of them are talking about unprecedented growth in the last half of this year and into the next year. And what we've seen is a lot of the companies that have become the big household names that we now know started during recessions. They built their structure, their infrastructure, their core during those dark days, and they were the ones who were ready, because at the end of every recession is a boom. And they were ready when the boom hit and were able to scoop up, they scooped up market share when there wasn't much business. And it's really easy to scoop market share when there is only, you think of it, if there's only 10 customers and I get 8 of them, it's not hard to get 8 customers. But if there's 100 customers, it's pretty hard to get 80. Unless you already have 8 of the 10, and then as things grow, you're the number one player, and it works. So getting market share at this time of the sales cycle we're in is really key. And once you have that market share, is being ready for the growth that's going to come. Because I think we're going to see growth like we've never seen before. We've never experienced.
Interesting. How about building sales team, Brian? That's something takes a lot of time, a lot of efforts, and also a lot of, it takes longer to train people to bring them to your level where you want them to be. Can that be work done now, while we waiting for the growth to then, get them the sales momentum, train your people, get them to the level where they need to get to, and they can practice all that, their closes and whatever they need to do. So can they use this time to polish their sales skills and build those sales team as well?
Yeah, I think now's a good time. Like I was saying, it's a good time to get market share. It's a good time to bring those people in. So you have you know, you don't have as many people to manage in your sales funnel. They're important and key, but you can spend the time with them, teach them, they can understand it on a smaller scale. And really the other part is, you know, I think getting salespeople in the future is going to be very, very difficult. So I think now is a good time to capture up the better talent. One of the things that kind of always comes to me is people always say, because sales is such a different person, and hiring salespeople is very different than hiring, you know, a good operations person or a good finance person. Hiring a good salesperson sometimes is against the grain of what you think is a good hire. And sometimes, you know, they're a bit of a rebel sometimes in your organization. But hiring a good salesperson, you know, I often get the piece of, you know, if I just hired one good sales guy, I don't have to worry about sales, right? It's just going to all happen, which is not the answer. It is not the answer.
It doesn't work that way.
No, I always kind of go, you know, and when one of the ways when I work with my clients about hiring salespeople is always get them to say, okay, let's profile what a good salesperson is in your organization. And, you know, a lot of times I think the person they profile is not the right person. They profile someone who's very, you know, likes to talk, is very flamboyant, has good, you know, good charisma, all those kind of things, which some of those characteristics are very important. But one who I put above all is someone who follows process. And they went, process? There's process in sales? I said, that's all it is. It's about numbers and process. And, you know, if numbers aren't working, you got to change it. It's a continuous improvement gone crazy. So it's someone who you think you would fit into your operation, and an engineer kind of operation person. That's the kind of person you want in sales. Someone who's going to re-engineer what they do every day to get those sales. Yes, it's great if they have some charisma. It's great if they're likable so that they can create bonds with your clients and prospects. But I think really one of those key things is, you know, is they are very process oriented, very detail oriented, which is not what we really think about when we talk about a good salesperson. But the best salespeople I've seen are people who are like that, who are very detail oriented, very process oriented. They knock it out of the park every time. I don't worry about those guys.
Nice. Yeah, listening skills sometimes is more important than speaking skills, you know, so you just got to listen. So let's talk about business leaders who are, you know, running, you know, sometimes there's owner-led sales or you know, some small companies, mid companies. What are the symptoms you see that, you know, maybe symptoms in their, you know, especially the growth is one of them, you know, if they're not growing, definitely they need help from you or somebody, you know, from outside the company. What other symptoms that business owners should be paying attention to that, you know, that should be triggering that, hey, maybe they need to get somebody's second opinion, and, you know, somebody like you, they need to talk to somebody and maybe get a second opinion, see if they can use some help there.
So one of the key things in sales is that there's a consistent effort. And this happens too often, I guess, even within salespeople, is, you know, their sales funnel is light. So they go and they do a lot of work and fill their sales funnel with a bunch of leads. They then spend all their time processing the leads. They get a couple of people down there they're pitching to, proposing to. They're working on closing. They spend all their effort there. Meanwhile, the top of their funnel is getting all empty. They close out that one sale and they have nobody in their funnel again. That's not what you want to see in your sales funnel. You want to see constant growth. So you want to see, you know, a specific amount of time put towards lead generation every day, a certain amount of, and once you actually, that's really where you have to spend the time. Because if you spend the time getting the leads to come into the top of the funnel, turning prospects into leads, then those leads, you know, you're not going to, well, hopefully you're not going to let those leads die in the vine. So you're going to process the leads, you're going to take them through the rest of the funnel. But you got to be consistent and every day spend time on that. When you have someone who is not a full-time salesperson, it's only part of their job, there's often a conflict, because so I just described a very, very structured job where, you know, you're spending 2 hours in the morning processing and creating leads. You're spending, you know, a bunch of time doing follow-up. You're spending a bunch of time, you know, pitching to your pitching proposals, and then you're spending time negotiating closes. Wash and repeat the next day. You're spending the same thing every day. That doesn't fit with the job description of someone who's also in charge of operations, because I've done operations as well, and operations tends to be everything's going smoothly. I have 4 hours in my day to do sales.
Mhm.
Everything's going smoothly. I have 4 hours to do. There's a crisis. I have 12 hours of operational crisis to deal with, and I'm not going to spend an hour on sales today. Oh, that 12 hours flipped into the next day, and I'm going to spend 6 hours on my operations, and I only have 2 hours for sales.
Mhm.
Well, now I've lost 2 hours of two. And what are you going to spend in those 2 hours when you should have been spending 4 on sales? You spent 2. You're going to spend it on those people closing, and then you're not going to do lead generation. You just start cutting out lead generation, and that's what keeps the funnel moving. So that's what tends to happen when in their lives, and it's really hard to avoid it. Now, I know some guys have tried to do, I do Mondays are sales, Wednesdays are sales, Tuesdays, they have this kind of daily pattern. But the problem with it is operational problems come up unexpectedly. And, if you're the owner of the company, there's other things too. There's people issues, there's financial issues, the bank calls, or whatever those pieces are. They could come from anywhere, but there's crises, and you do a lot of firefighting. That's part of the job, but it also means it's really hard to stay attached. I found when I was in that leader role, I often did spend time with doing sales as well with my sales team. And basically I offered, as the president of the company, I offered myself as a sales tool to my sales team. And I said, if you have a client where you think that parading the president in is going to make a difference, because that does help sometimes, use it. I will show up. I will be your dog and pony show, and I'll go in there and we'll help close the deal. And it does really help. But I tried not to get in and be sales. I just tried to be a tool for sales. And trying to do sales when you're in that leadership role is really difficult, because you're often fighting fires, and you're not spending that consistent time. Being a salesperson is a day-to-day operation. It's something you got to do every day, all the time. You got to be consistent. And that's where I often suggest, if they can't do that day-to-day piece, what they need to do is work with someone so that they're getting qualified leads show up, and they're just going to deal with qualified leads. That will work for a business owner if they can, because they will find the time for a qualified lead call. They're not going to have that time to be able to do the lead generation on a daily basis. That's probably too much for them to ask of them. So
good stuff. No, definitely, that is a challenge. You try to wear many different hats. When you do that, focus goes out of the way, right? So that's where the growth suffers. Very good point. Very interesting, Brian. Where can people find you, and how can they connect with you, Brian? If they find that they want to get a second opinion, or they want to just have a discussion with you, and where can they find you?
So the best place to find me is where the best place to find anyone nowadays is. That's on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's activity has gone through the roof in the last little while. It's incredibly active. I'm seeing my clients where we do lead generation on LinkedIn. They're have more than doubled from pre-COVID times. So LinkedIn is the place, and that's where you can find me too. So if you look at LinkedIn /IN, which is the thing for LinkedIn, and then /Brian Crew, you're going to get right to me.
Got you. What's looking forward for BricConsulting for this year, Brian, or next year? What's some plan on your side? And you looking for any changes? Where are you looking for your growth, Brian?
So actually I've, as I mentioned before at the beginning, I done a lot of phone calls in the beginning part of the COVID area, and that's really created for me a lot of strategic relationships. So those have been developing, and what I'm seeing now is I'm white labeling my services to various clients, and vice versa, is I'm going to white label some services into my business that are going to help. There's definitely about 3 or 4, 5, 6 really good practices that you need to do to maximize your sales efforts. And so what I'm doing is finding the best partners possible to provide that, as opposed to me kind of fumbling with it. I'm going to get pros to do each part of those pieces, and that way, it's just going to be just a killer process. That's kind of where I'm going. So a lot more collaboration, a lot more offering of services. So my packages, the packages servicing I'm offering are more extensive.
I see. Yeah, there's so much to learn from you on many different angles, Brand. I will definitely recommend anybody who's just want to get a second opinion or just want to have a discussion with our sales or just a growth itself, reach out to you. And we send these videos out to our clients, and I'll include your LinkedIn and all the website information below the video as well, so they can have a click right there and connect with you straight from there.
Yeah, and if anyone just wants to have a conversation, because a lot of people sometimes, like I said, will think it's their salespeople that are the problem and not delivering, but it could really be a couple of other things. So if they just want to have a quick conversation, I can kind of drill them through some questioning and some quick assessment, and we could kind of direct them on where they should probably look at trying to fix their sales problems.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. I learned so much from our discussion, Brian. Thank you so much for your time. Look forward to a future discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.